Okay, and with that, I think we will get underway for the day. So hello and welcome to all of you. Good morning or afternoon or evening, whatever time you are experiencing in your day right now. And thank you for joining us for this, the final of what has been a long series of meetings that we have gathered in as the JCoR digital delegation to the 2023 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. And happy to be with all of you once more to discuss this forum, which we have been preparing for together since January, which we collectively experienced either virtually or in person or some combination of the two earlier this month. And so now is a moment for us to kind of gather some of our thoughts from the entire journey and to perhaps exchange our reflections on the experience and also to think together about what we would like to do or what we would like to take forward in terms of action or further study or monitoring of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in our respective locations in the world. So, as I said, our plan for today is to recall and reflect on our experience of the forum, share some key lessons we want to take forward, exchange intentions for follow-up action, and recommend some next steps for staying connected both with JCoR and with this entire sustainable development agenda that is currently guiding the whole UN system. So we will begin today, as we always have in our gatherings, with a short prayer to gather ourselves in the uniqueness of this spiritual community that brings us together. So we pray, Holy Spirit, we welcome you. We know that you are the counselor of truth, our help in need, and the one who fills us with the Spirit of God. You so graciously work to intercede for us to the Creator and to comfort us with your peace that goes beyond all understanding. Come, Holy Spirit. Today, we ask for godly counsel and direction. Help us to search our hearts, to name the precious fruits of our journey thus far, and to discern our next steps. We seek to feel your work in our own hearts and minds. Holy Spirit, please come. Amen. So now to get our minds turning and to bring back some of the earlier steps of our journey, which may be almost forgotten by now since we started taking steps together in January, I thought I would offer a brief recollection of all that we have covered together thus far between January and today. So you may remember on our first meeting online back in January, we offered an introduction to the Justice Coalition of Religious, JCoR, as well as an introduction to the Sustainable Development Goals and the role of religious congregations in the UN system. In February, we then had an introduction to the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, as well as the voluntary national reviews, the reports that are presented by governments and others during the forum. And we discussed several pathways for us as civil society to participate in the VNR process and in the forum. In March and April, all were invited to participate in some way in the regional fora on sustainable development, which were offered in each of the global regions as a precursor or stepping stone to the global forum that happens in July. And these were sponsored by the UN Economic and Social Commissions for each of the global regions. So some of you may have followed virtually or maybe even in person some pieces of the forum in your own region. Then in April, we gathered again online and shared some reflections from those regional fora for sustainable development. We started to discuss the priority or theme SDGs that would serve as the focus for the 2023 HLPF, and then began reflecting on perhaps which of those 5 priority SDGs each of us felt called to focus on or to respond to in our own engagement with the forum. And we began to think about what specific projects or ministries in which we're involved could contribute to the discussion around these priority or thematic SDGs. Then in May, we began to get to some of the technical and logistical aspects of preparation for the forum. We discussed the schedule and design for our own active involvement, the way that we were going to bring our voices into the space of the forum, which was the JCoR SDG Lab sessions that we ultimately conducted during the first and a little into the second week of the forum. We also talked about where we could find the voluntary national review reports that were being submitted by our respective national governments, as well as reports that were being submitted by various civil society networks that operate in our respective countries. And we also offered a little bit of guidance for how we could go about reflecting on and critiquing some of those VNR reports. Then in June, now getting closer to the pieces we probably remember well, we had meetings for each region within this community to discuss some of the individual responses to our various countries' VNR reports, as some of them by that time were available and published online. Unfortunately, others were not published until just days before the forum began, but still each of us was able to access some data to show how much progress our country had made toward the SDGs thus far, and we're able to have some interaction about our own feelings, whether they agreed with the report, disagreed with the report, or whether we saw some pieces missing from the story that was being presented in the report. It was also a space where we could share insights from our own ministries that relate to the Sustainable Development Goals or our country's reports. Then in early July, just before the forum began, we met one more time to go over final preparations for our JCoR SDG Lab sessions. We reviewed the HLPF program schedule, talked about where we could watch events online, recommended a few events to attend, and also offered some examples of how to engage on social media during the forum. And then, of course, came the time for the forum itself. And the first major piece of our contribution as the JCoR delegation was this series that we called the JCoR SDG Lab. And so the first session dedicated to SDG 6, I'm just going to go through who presented, who spoke during each of these sessions by way of thanking and acknowledging each of you for your valuable contributions, the time that you invested in studying your country's voluntary national review reports, the time that you spent preparing your response, and for navigating the technology necessary to be able to share your insights and your reflections and your good practices with our global community that gathered for those lab sessions. So we'll begin with the first session on SDG 6 in acknowledging Sister Justine Capem of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Cuneo, Father Franco Torres of the Claretian Missionaries, Muzama David, mission partner of the Claretian Missionaries, and all three of them offering perspectives from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Then Sister Vivian Chanda of the Religious Sisters of Charity, which is a member of Unanima International, speaking about Zambia. And Father Gregory Mins of the Society of the Divine Word, which is a member of Vivat International, speaking about Timor-Leste. Then for the session on SDG number 7, related to clean energy, clean and affordable energy, we heard from Christian Mbenga of Resource Matters, who's a mission partner of the Claretian Missionaries, as well as Sister Lorraine Connell of the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, and Sister Lucy Louange Kima, also of the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, all of them speaking about the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we also heard from Jessica Perez, who is a mission partner of the Claretian Missionaries in Venezuela. Then in the session on SDG 9, we had the pleasure of learning from Sister Ernestine Lalau of the Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd, who spoke about the situation in Burkina Faso. Sister Fanula Lynch of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Loretto Generalit, who spoke of her experience of Ireland. Jessica Perez, again, of the Claretian Missionaries in Venezuela. And Samuel Osorio Lopez, a mission partner of the Salesians of Don Bosco in Colombia. Then in the session on SDG number 11, we had a series of video messages. First, one from Father Carlos Morena of the Salesians of Don Bosco in Argentina. Another presentation on a ministry of the Daughters of Wisdom, which is Sophia Housing in Ireland. And that video message featured the voice of Sister Jean Quinn, a Daughter of Wisdom and a member of Unanima International, as well as many ministry partners who are involved in that Sophia Housing initiative. And finally, we heard from Sister Ana DeLuco of the Sisters for Christian Community in the United States. And in our last session dedicated to goal number 17 on partnerships and resources that support sustainable development, we heard from Sister Sarah Rudolph of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Loretto Generalit, who spoke about Canada, as well as Varka Kaladzieva, who is a mission partner of the Sisters of St. Joseph in Canada, and Sister Giovanna Maria Muha of the Congregation of Jesus, who spoke to us of her experience of Romania. And finally, from Sister Winifred Doherty of the Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd, who offered reflections on her congregation's experience in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So once again, I want to offer profound thanks, appreciation, and admiration for each of those mentioned on the previous slides, for all of your tremendous efforts to engage in this process and to help educate us all along the way by sharing some of your experiences, your practices from your respective corners of the world. And I also want to let anyone else who might be interested know that we have recordings of each of these sessions of the SDG Lab available on JCoR's YouTube channel, and they are all available in English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese each session. So if you missed any of them and you would like to go back and hear from some or all of the individuals that we've listed here, you can go back and do that when you have time available. And I will be sharing the link again to that playlist with all of you in these slides and after this session, so that you are able to quickly find that playlist and find the sessions that are interesting to you. And then I also want to mention that we did have some events in person here in New York during the forum. The major components of that were that we had a welcome gathering and a bit of orientation for those who were gathered to represent our NGOs here. So this was our welcome gathering and the group that met that day. And we also offered morning masses and evening reflections for those who were serving as delegates in person in New York. So here's an image from one of our evening reflections, this one on the theme of SDG 17 on partnership. And we had evening reflections dedicated to each of the priority SDGs. And these were a space where each one could reflect not only on the thematic SDG, but on their experiences of that particular day in the conference. So now that we've taken a walk back through our journey together and some of its key elements and steps, I would like to invite you all into a few minutes of personal reflection, during which you might gather your thoughts and prepare to share some of them with the group. So we have a few questions here that can help to prompt your reflection process. But if you have thoughts that extend beyond the boundaries of these questions, please do not feel limited by them. But these are offered as a way to help get your thoughts flowing if they are helpful to you. So we'll take a few minutes to go over these, and I will rotate through. I have them written in French and Spanish as well. So I will periodically switch the slides from language to language so you can refer back to them. But the questions for our reflection are: what surprised you about your experience of the HLPF? What was the most valuable thing you heard or learned during the forum? How would you like to follow this learning experience? Which we might say, in other words, is there some type of action that you would like to take to share some of the lessons from the experience, or an action to contribute to the way that civil society monitors SDG progress in your country? And whatever actions you're interested in taking, how can the JCoR community support that follow-up action? And finally, a bit of reflection on the program itself is, how can we improve the support that we're offering to future JCoR delegates to the HLPF? So if there are components to the program or additional types of guidance that you think might have been helpful to you throughout this process, we would love to hear from you and learn how we can offer better support when we repeat this program again for future years of the forum. So I think we can take about 10 minutes right now, between 5 and 10 minutes. And again, I will keep rotating through the slides so that each of us can have a chance to see them in English, Spanish, and French. And then we will come back together to share some of our thoughts in 10 minutes. All right, and so we will see you on the other side of that time. Just checking in to tell everyone that we have about 5 more minutes to reflect on these questions, and then we will reconvene. Right, I'm going to call us all back from our reflections. Give you a moment maybe to write down or just sum up your last thought. Okay, so now is the much more interesting part of the meeting, where I stopped talking at you, as I have been so far today, and we all have the chance to exchange some ideas and some thoughts about the experience of this program and the forum itself, and where we should go from here. So with that, I would like to invite whoever is interested in sharing some thoughts with the group. We don't need to address any particular question in any particular order, but anyone who would like to respond to one or more of these reflection questions, we'd like to invite you to share. And if you do wish to speak, you can either raise your hand with your camera on, or you can use the raise hand button, which you will find underneath the reactions button, which may appear at the bottom of your screen as a smiling face. Or if you don't see it at the bottom of your screen, it may be underneath the more button. So if you click on more, and then reactions, and then raise hand, that is another way of indicating that you would like to say something to the group. So is there anyone who would like to get us started? Yes, I see Sarah Rudolph's hand. Please begin our exchange, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. First, I just wanted to thank you for all that you have done over these many months, preparing all of our different sessions, but especially the prayers, because that was in the response to that first question. But what surprised me actually was how wonderful it was to have that prayerful time together each day. And I just want to thank you for putting together those reflections on the different SDGs. It certainly helped me to enter into that particular SDG of focus in a different way, to help me reflect on it from a more spiritual or theological perspective, which was really helpful. But then also it just gave us a great framework for then integrating the day. So I really appreciated that. I think having the opportunity to share reflections from what we had experienced, either at side events or the plenary or whatever during the day, it was just very helpful. So I want to just thank you for that. But then also it encouraged that maybe that was a lot of work. So maybe others of us can get involved and help to lead these things. But I think it would be a great practice to continue for the different sessions or the different conferences and commissions as it's appropriate, but I really want to thank you for that and just affirm that was a very positive and meaningful aspect of the HLPF for me. Can I jump into a few other things? I did write down notes if it's okay.
Yes, go ahead, share it all.
Yeah, okay, fantastic, thanks. And then I'll be quiet. But I want to say what was also really helpful for me was because I was only present physically most of the time for the VNRs. I wasn't there for the earlier parts of the HLPF where they were looking at the different goals. So my experience mostly is reflecting on the VNR process. And I was so taken with the way that Ireland's VNR was presented. The fact that they had invited this woman, a refugee, to speak as part of the presentation. And she was not critical of the government in her comments, but she was very honest. She shared the challenges that she experienced. I mean, you could read, criticism into it perhaps, but just the way that she presented and the way that she was given the space to share her experience and to relate the experience of other people in similar situations, it was very valuable and it was refreshing because my own government candidate, as I shared in our reflection time, that I was not impressed by the way that they presented the report, and it felt very superficial to me on many levels. And so I appreciated at least that the Irish government was trying to peel back some of that superficiality and give real experience a voice, and to have somebody provide a more critical, let's say, perspective of what's happening in the country. But also the fact that the Irish government invited young people, again, something that I think is extraordinary, to invite them to participate in their own chapter for the VNR itself, and that they were present there. I do actually have a contact that I want to follow up with, and this is something I would suggest for the group, is that if we can talk about civil society engagement, like best practices, because we come together for this HLPF, in person or virtually, and we've had a lot of preparation time in advance. But now coming back to our own governments, how are we going to keep the momentum going? Because, like, for me, it's 5 years. It was 2018 when the Canadian government presented its first VNR. 2023, it could be 2028, or who knows. But in those intervening 5 years, like, I don't want to stop the pressure and also keep the momentum going. So if there are best practices that we can share as a collaborative here, how to keep engagement going at home would be really helpful. At home, and then feeding into UN processes where we can. Yeah, and maybe that's it for me, but thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sarah. And in case anyone couldn't tell, Sarah has been both with us online and was also in New York for the forum itself. So she had a very full experience from all angles of the program. But thank you for those reflections, Sarah. That's much appreciated. And the point about how to keep a conversation going among us is a really good one, especially as we look to kind of continue this chain of accountability, how to be consistent in applying pressure now when really the plan for the next VNR from each country is just taking shape, and there is a lot of possibility and perhaps more room to help guide it or improve it going forward, rather than coming in kind of in the last 6 months when probably most of the process is already complete, and really people are just writing the report at that point. If we want to influence the process itself of collecting data and collecting input, many governments did mention somewhere in their presentation, we don't want to wait until 3 or 4 years from now to start thinking about this again. We don't want to put this experience on a shelf and let it gather dust. Tomorrow begins the process of the next review. And I think, that's something we want to hear, but now we have to find ways to apply pressure to make it happen, so that it's not just some more lovely rhetoric that we are hearing on the floor of the UN. So a very valid point, and that perhaps if there are good practices from within this community about how to apply that pressure continuously, that's something that we can offer to one another going forward. Are there any other reactions or comments that anyone would like to share with the group from your experience? Yes, I see Fanula, and then after that we'll go to Sister Giovanna. Fanula?
Hi, greetings to everyone from the Irish Isle, which is true to its name today, with plenty of rain. So just to give you an update on the weather forecast in Ireland. I'm echoing some of what Sarah said in my reflection also. But firstly, what surprised me was that I suppose it was my first time in the city of Akron, shall we say, and the whole concept of the UN, I suppose it came home to me. And just the whole idea of how many countries involved, etc., etc. I really began to, I finally realized what that is all about, and the impact that can have. I suppose that surprised me greatly. What I found most valuable, and Sarah has mentioned as well, is just having those debriefing sessions. I think that's what you call them, Teresa. In the evenings, for me, it really brought me to the next level, rather than just attending sessions and go home and then attend a session and another session the next day and follow through. So instead of that, it was good to reflect a little and to meet with like-minded people and to share on the various issues. And also too, people from, you know, so many different orders, etc., and backgrounds. It was great, the wealth of experience, etc. It was great to tap into that. I think I'll just follow on and just finish on the questions that you posed, Teresa, if that's okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. It has come home to me as well, and I think you would have referred to it as well at one of our opening sessions, is this whole sense of JCoR, and that rather than being individuals that were representative as a group, rather than smaller groups. And I think that's very important. The whole idea of networking and collaboration, I think, is something of the present and more so of the future, rather than working individually, that we're working as a group, be it religious, lay, that we're all part of the laity, as far as I know. That hasn't changed since Vatican II. So that we collaborate as such. Looking towards the future, I suppose, again, Sarah mentioned there about she mentioned the Irish, thank you, Sarah. And I had to go to New York to meet quite a few people that are very, geographically, are very close to me here in Dublin. And I hope to meet up with them in the next few months. The Irish ambassador asked to meet with me as well when he comes over in October. So it has been very worthwhile in that sense, and I hope that will follow through, and to bring home the whole idea of advocacy and the sense of fleshing that out among our people here. I suppose before I went to the UN, it was something outside of my antenna, shall we say. But now that I have experienced it, I would like to bring it more into other people's reality, I suppose. And a way of that, doing that will be through networking. Also, the young people that were there, from Ireland, I met with them at a meeting as well, and among others, and they expressed an interest to network and come back. I've said to our minister, who we met at the time, Ryan, who presented the report, that what happens next. So I look forward to being part of what happens next here in Ireland, and thinking then, of course, with yourselves. So they're my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Fionnuala. And I think we need to congratulate you on managing to secure the promise of a meeting with the ambassador from your exchange here, and to bring it back to a meeting kind of on familiar territory and on home ground, is, I think, an important link to make in delivering this message that, you know, I'm meeting you in New York, but I'm going back home to that place you represent, and I'm going to be watching from there. And when you're there, I'd like to see you again, and to say, you know, this UN place is not it's not a separate world, and what happens there needs to be reflected here, and vice versa. And so to give that message of of accountability, and to make concrete plans is really excellent. So we hope that that meeting will in fact come to fruition, and that you will be able to bring forward some of your outstanding concerns after hearing the report from Ireland, or also to add your own insights and your own experiences to help them continue implementing the goals going forward. And I think that's a great first example of what Sarah was asking for, which is to say, you know, what could our good practices be? I think seeking a meeting, and obviously it's more possible in some places than others, but at least seeking to have some kind of a follow-up meeting with a government representative, whether they were someone who is at the UN normally, or just someone who is a minister of some type of social ministry, or if it's development or women and children, or transportation, infrastructure, whatever the relevant ministry may be, to try to have a conversation with someone, and to send the message, we saw what, you know, or we read what you were saying at that forum in New York, and we are keeping an eye on you, and we intend to stay in conversation about it. We don't intend to let you put it on a shelf. So thank you for that great example of immediate follow-up. That's really exciting, and hopefully you'll keep us informed about how that goes too, Fionnuala.
I certainly will.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Sister Giovanna to share her thoughts.
Yeah, hello, everybody from Italy. I would like to present, I'm still overwhelmed by all that I have lived and experienced. It has been a gift and a grace to be with you, all of you. I'm grateful for this fantastic opportunity to participate in such a meeting with all that it brings. And I will repeat some thought, but I have to say it. I'm extremely grateful for the solid and thorough preparation we had for our arrival, the openness, warmth, generosity, friendship, brotherhood with which we were received, the trust we were given, the attention and care with which we were surrounded, the support and help with which we were overwhelmed, the strong desire to know, to deepen, and especially to be sufficiently prepared to become ambassadors, multipliers of all that we experience. And then concerning with the question, on the one hand, I was surprised by the seriousness, accuracy, honesty, and courage with which some of countries presented the real situation, the steps taken, the path achieved. And then on the other hand, what concern the reports, the many gaps left more or less intentionally for other countries. Then I appreciated the courage with which the various groups or individuals expressed their point of view towards the official VNR, their vigilance, their desire to change what is not working, to get involved, to help people who do not have courage, the strength, the confidence to intervene. And yes, there are so many things to say. I was impressed that Roma people were there, that some representative, that the person with disabilities could speak but at the beginning, in the first day, and then the people, yes, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm very aware that that's mean our gift, our everything what we received, they have to be it's a huge responsibility. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sister Giovanna. And you raise an important point about, we spend a lot of time, I think, talking about in our preparation, there are gaps in the story, in the narrative that the governments often present in spaces like this conference. And it's our job to kind of help to fill in some of those gaps in the story. But there are moments of honesty and clarity that emerge if we're watching closely. And it is very refreshing when we see a government kind of honestly and sincerely present its challenges or shortcomings with regard to achieving its goals. And I think that's something that we can also affirm and lift up in our interactions with them, to say, the honesty itself is the foundation of a meaningful conversation and interaction among governments, and that we as civil society would much rather hear a longer list of challenges than accomplishments, if that is an accurate reflection of the reality, which it usually is. And so if we can affirm that and even kind of lessen the threshold of, I guess, of fear or hesitation to speak about challenges or even mistakes in some cases, there's so much to be learned in a space like this forum if governments and we as civil society can share the hard parts of our journey or the disappointments in our journey. There's a lot more to be learned there than kind of glossing over or keeping the narrative totally positive for the sake of some kind of good image or good story to share. And it's, that honesty is the foundation to a better way forward. So I think you're right to say that's something worth emphasizing and lifting up. We always have to, in addition to calling governments out on bad behavior, so to speak, it's important that we also name when there's good behavior and to encourage that. So thank you for that reminder for us all. And I'll say it was also a joy and a pleasure to receive you here in New York. So I'm glad that we had that opportunity to meet each other. And I would like to go next to Father Gregory Mins. Gregory? You need to unmute yourself, Gregory.
Hello, good evening to everyone from Timor-Leste. I hope my internet is okay for you. Oh, it will do justice to my sharing. Okay. So it is great to again come back to JCoR group. I thought with the sessions, everything got over and we are coming back and we are becoming independent. But the best thing I experienced is that follow-up programs that is continuing to support us. So in order to participate in HLPF, it was really experience, at least from my part, both like from government representative and civil society representative were already there, but I was also selected from the independent representative. Something beautiful I felt, because I was not really part of it, but there is another way to take part in it, which could bring our voice to the HLPF forum. So I was very lucky, I felt, because sometimes our government VN process was not really in development mode, but they do some things and they really try to present concrete in paperwork. So there was an opportunity to bring forward really my experience. So it was something very nice that I will not forget. And what I learned the valuable thing or heard during the forum is I experienced that many countries maybe they're trying to just present the formalities that they're trying to complete, but other way also some nations have taken very seriously and they're trying to work upon it, and their interventions also they're coming from the deep experience of what is affecting them. And this is the concept of cry of the poor or cry of the voiceless, what really taking place in the front. So that really I affected. But in my case, I was, of course, for my part, it was similar feeling, but sometimes from government part, it was not really trying to do, I felt, but some other nations really from the both parties, reality was coming and coming to an intercourse of development mode. So that what I very much appreciated. And what experience could I follow that although this experience have gone in, but there is a lot of rich experience how to take part in DNR, HLPF, these are all familiar. So in the future years also, maybe some more congregations coming together, working together, and I can be also guide how they can go ahead, bring their experience to support the development of the nation. That is very important. So in this process, collaborating in the grassroots levels and coming with unity, and when at least in Timor-Leste, when our Catholic religion is very strong, when we are united, we have a big say to the government, and government cannot negate. That part I felt it. And second part, although we are from the grassroots level, but when we went to New York for HLPF or in the major group, were also well taken care, and everything was discussed, reflected, and it was also a platform to form ourselves a better activist of humanitarian activities. So I thank you for your well good job that you have rendered to us, and I think I have learned a lot, and this will I'll carry on. Secondly, I also felt that when I took part in VNR of Timor-Leste, some of the suggestions or recommendations and some of the critics were not a part of the government. So I felt out of the place whether they will take or not. But our leader, Father Paul Rahmat, suddenly suggested for the independent team to bring to the forum. So I can represent, but I was a little afraid of how will it go. But when I heard that major group, I was really relieved, and we have a better platform to go through. So this organization really can boost us. Although government is a big organization, but we can also make another bigger organization to contrast or to put forward our positivity activities that we are doing. So lastly, I am planning that I will also conduct some of the sessions to call upon government representatives and some of the groups, and what they have presented, have a debate and make the Vienna reports transparent to the people, so that government, when next they work, they also will be more true to themselves. And one development, before I reached to Timor-Leste, I saw that the minister who presented DNR already called for the TV channel live debate on how the SDG implementation was not appropriate. So that was something nice, negatively presented, but in the future, maybe next term, they can implement it in better way. So last point, I expect that similar type of formation or accompaniment could be followed up so that we have anything we can approach and we can share our ideas to help our world in a better way.
Thank you so much, Gregory. And for anyone who was not aware, Gregory was referring to the fact that he had the opportunity to speak and the opportunity to speak on behalf of a much larger coalition within civil society, which is known as the NGO Major Group. And this is one of the major channels through which civil society has the opportunity to speak kind of in the room, as it were, in the same room with governments where they are making their presentations. And these are very limited opportunities, unfortunately, during this forum. We are very restricted in needing to come together as a huge segment of civil society and to fit our ideas into a very short opportunity to speak. And Gregory was invited by that group to speak in response to the presentation by Timor-Leste. And he delivered it in excellent fashion. But it's great, Gregory, to hear that this was a positive experience for you, and that there's even some advantage in needing to come together with such a large group to organize our response. While on the other hand, it takes more preparation and effort to plan in advance, to be part of creating a statement with many different organizations and different groups. There's also a factor of strengthening and encouraging so that you could feel that you were speaking not only from your own experience, but that you were delivering the concerns and the sentiments of a much larger community, and that's a reason for confidence, a reason to feel that we're making a solid and worthwhile statement. And so that's one of the positive sides of having such restricted and limited methods by which we are able to speak in the high-level political forum. So thank you for highlighting that for us. And I'm excited and encouraged to hear that you also are intending to bring some of the lessons and the key ideas that you gained from your experience here back to mobilizing your community back in Timor-Leste, and to perhaps even making some of the UN documents and materials more accessible by sharing them in more typical language, so that more people can be engaged with the entire concept. And I think those are excellent plans, and as with Fanula, we look forward to hearing about your progress in sharing your experience and also in continuing to seek conversations with the government there in Timor-Leste. And we will go next to Sister Ans James. Sister Ans?
Hi. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hello.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay. A bit of background noise. So just to say that my participation was virtual. I had an interest in the Zambia VNR. I've been in Zambia for about 11 years before moving to the United States last year. So I listened into the Zambia VNR as well as the VNRs of Congo, DRC, and Central African Republic, because the Comboni sisters have communities there. In the lead up to the HLPF, I had the opportunity to participate in a civil society group drafting the civil society statement in response to the Zambia VNR. I found the VNR was fairly balanced, and although the level of analysis to some extent needed greater depth, according to me, I would just maybe share a question. What I have not understood really is the process that governments actually use to engage civil society in the VNR process, whether the UN also has any, I don't know, oversight role in that or not. So going ahead, I would like to see how, especially faith-based organizations in the respective countries that are presenting VNR reports will make their voices heard, and also, I guess, demand to be included in the follow-up and the monitoring, as well as future reporting processes. What I noticed in my participation in the civil society statement drafting process, it was rather haphazard. On the whole, I guess it went well when I listened to the actual delivery on the day of the VNR report. But I noticed during the drafting process that it didn't seem to be so all that inclusive from the side of civil society actors present and actually engaged, especially as far as faith-based organizations are concerned. I really appreciated the role that the NGO major groups representative had, because she really played a big part in keeping the channels of communication open and as objective as they could be in the circumstances, and also trying, I think, maybe to correct something like a tendency to restrict who was actually present, in terms of I think having a more comprehensive kind of group of more representative group of civil society groups or actors present and engaged in the drafting process. So those are just my impressions. On the whole, definitely it was very enriching. Maybe just another question. Do we know if the civil society statements will be accessible online? Will they be uploaded on the HPLF website or not? At the side, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Strans. And now, shifting to hear from those who were following the forum online, which we know is a different experience. And while we were just hearing from Gregory about his opportunity to be in the room and to engage and to be part of that civil society coalition that does get to speak, Sister Ans is pointing out the other side of that experience, which is that it is a lot of work in preparation to come together to channel so many voices into such a small statement, and that as a result, when you sit in the conference or view the conference, you hear many more voices from government than you do from civil society. And government gets much more time to speak, and for that reason, that it feels like an imbalance, which is, of course, the design of the forum. It remains the fact in the United Nations that governments and those representing government do get a priority in terms of time and space and opportunity to speak. But I will say one positive observation of this year's forum, as compared to some previous years, is while we still have progress to make in terms of inclusion of civil society, I think we did see some progress this year in terms of the process, which you asked about for the governments coming up with their own reports. I think there may have been one or two governments in the past, not saying no one, but there were not many governments in the past that invited members of civil society to speak during the official presentation of their voluntary national review, even if they were theoretically consulted in the process of creating the report. We typically didn't see someone actually presenting the civil society perspective. And this year we did see that from quite a few governments actually inviting someone to speak. Now, we also recognize that depending on which government it is, some of those who were there speaking on behalf of civil society were very much kind of hand selected by the government, and their role was more or less to affirm the government rather than to critique or to challenge it as much. And so it's not an entirely independent voice, shall we say, that was part of the process, but there were others that did seem to be offering some genuine points of critique and some genuine points of challenge to the government, which was an interesting step forward. And I think the number of them that approached their presentations that way is something that will kind of set a new standard or a new expectation for future presentations. It will be expected that civil society be present and have a voice as part of the official presentation. Now, in answer to your question about that process, the UN does have guidelines that it's kind of like a checklist about the components that should be included in the report of each government, and also how the process should look. There is actually a whole guidebook, and they've offered programs for the government themselves about how to conduct a good, consultative, participatory, inclusive, voluntary national review that would include the perspectives of civil society. Unfortunately, all the UN can really do is offer these kinds of guidelines, but then when it comes to actually creating these reports and conducting the review, because the whole review itself is really voluntary, the UN can only kind of offer suggestions, but it can't exactly require that a government conduct their review in a specific way or submit report that has the exact type of content that the UN suggests. So all they can do is guide and encourage and invite that best practice in terms of consulting civil society in an independent way and a non-coercive way to get that truly independent voice. But again, I just want to underscore, I do think we're seeing steps forward in governments holding themselves to a higher standard of inclusion. And I hope that example will kind of spread, and that in the future, we will see more and more governments feeling compelled to set aside some space in their official presentations for the voice from civil society. And with that, little by little, hopefully we will start to hear even more truth in the room. Then in terms of your second question about the civil society statements, I'm not sure if a written version of them is posted anywhere. If it is, it might be on the website of the major groups and other stakeholders, or on the individual websites of the various groups, like, for example, the website of the NGO major group. If it is not, however, or I suspect even if there are some posted, you probably won't find all of them in any one location. So another thing that's possible is to just go back to the individual recordings from the VNR presentations, which are all available on UN Web TV. And there you can, it's obviously more of a painful exercise to go back and read through, or rather to find the exact part of each video where civil society is speaking, but it is there. So if you want to revisit the statements, at least in video form, you can get the words from civil society. And an advantage of that is also that you will also find the official UN translations are there as well. So if you would like to hear that content in a language other than its original text, you would also be able to find that on Web TV.
Thank you so much, Teresa. If I may a question, so is there a way you might see it possible for, in this case, FBOs in Zambia to, sort of stand up and be counted, to say, okay, we're aware that this process takes place every so often, or whenever the government decides they're ready for a new report. How can we be involved? Is that possible even?
I mean, I can envision it if you can. I think, a good place to begin might be by sending out a message to that very same group that you were engaged with in preparing for the forum. And now would be a great moment to do it while we haven't yet forgotten the forum, and the group still feels like a cohesive unit. You might try sending a message to those entities, those groups, because I think many of them were probably faith-based organizations, and to say, are others interested in working on this together, in seeking a meeting, or in creating some kind of written document that basically makes a record of your presence in the process of your engagement, by saying, a letter of introduction, even saying this is a group of faith-based organizations who have been following the VNR process in Zambia, and maybe make a few points about, these are elements of the VNR from the Zambian government that we appreciated and welcomed, and here are some points that we would like to add. You could say some things that were missing, or here are some questions that we would like to pose to you, and kind of just invite a conversation in a diplomatic way, but then be able to kind of co-sign that as a whole group. Could be a really powerful, not just exercise, but an initiative, a way of carrying forward anything good that was said or promised by the government, as well as kind of creating a sense within the group that you've already connected with, that this is an ongoing activity, and our work can continue as a group, and let's make ourselves known. So hopefully, come time for the next voluntary national review, we will be a known group that the government, if they're looking for input to their official report, we will know that they know we exist, and maybe they will create an opening for us. And even if they don't respond to that, there's nothing to stop you from continuing to share your thoughts from your side, and to make yourselves known in that way. But that's what I would suggest in terms of immediate steps, especially because I know there was a group that was getting organized for Zambia.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for all your engagement, Ans. And we would go next to Andrea Machuca. Please go ahead, Andrea.
Hola, buenos días, ¿cómo están?
Morning.
Yo me inscribí en los laboratorios para poder participar de manera
I inscribed myself to participate in the JCoR labs, but I could not connect to anyone because my father passed away in those days. But while reflecting on this experience, I cannot summarize everything that I could in all the process. I really believe that the sharing and seeing how friends from all over the world were working towards the SDGs, it could help me a lot to keep on in my dream of having a better future for my country. And I also value a lot all the projects that were shared on at the educational level, because I work with the youth and I work at Delegation. And this idea of being more idealistic, more empathic, fighting for a better world, it's helped me a lot, really. And as an educator inside the Clarisian Missionaries project, I am very predisposed to listening and to sharing. But I would like to start, or one suggestion for a future action is to create a formation program so that where we can share our experiences so that the youth can start participating.
se preparan, toman como referentes situaciones reales que han ocurrido en el mundo, asumen roles de personas que han participado dentro de los modelos de Naciones Unidas y llevan a cabo el modelo de naciones. Qué interesante sería poder generar espacios para que estudiantes no solo de nuestra institución, sino de otros colegios de la ciudad de Caracas pudiesen pues tener una aproximación a las Naciones Unidas desde la JCoR, que ellos puedan ver que eso que ellos hacen como ensayo de cómo trabajan y se forman para poder ser críticos y luchar por ideales de justicia, pues no es algo utópico, es algo real, y que hay gente que día a día deja su vida, su trabajo, su disposición, un servicio completamente entregado al reino, pero desde esto, en lo que creemos que son los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Para mí, la construcción del reino, para esto, yo no puedo hablar del reino de Dios si no busco este bien común.
Unfortunately, I cannot talk about the experience of the JCoR lab, but I was very enriched by the commitment of everybody with the SDGs, with building the kingdom of God. And I really would appreciate the opportunity to give the youth an opportunity to participate in this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And we extend our deepest condolences for the loss of your father. It must be an unbelievably difficult time, but I know you have been with us on this journey from the very beginning. And I so appreciate your steadfast participation and even now to rejoin us for this reflection. And I also appreciate the suggestion of finding a way to specifically reach out to involve young people. I know you are not alone in that. We certainly have very many members of our religious community around the world, and even among the delegates who were part of this year's program, who were preparing, who are working in schools or in some other setting with young people. And of course, their voices are extremely important to be heard as not only future leaders, but current leaders, individuals with ideas and who really have the most to gain or the most to lose by the success of policies being implemented today. And so that's a good point for us to consider going forward, is how we can either further incorporate young people into the programs that we are already offering, or perhaps to create something of a designated space for them to offer important background information and to help encourage them to be engaged in some of those similar opportunities for input that we talked about earlier this year through the country teams that created the official response through the major groups, or by engaging with civil society networks in our respective countries who are monitoring the SDGs on an ongoing basis. And I think to combine that with some of the suggestions we already heard today, to think about how we can organize now as a way of going forward from the forum, by perhaps communicating some of what has happened this year, by sharing in some way the reports that have been created, make them accessible to youth, and perhaps put them in language that is more meaningful, and maybe not in a 200-page report, but to offer some key points and to ask some interesting and thoughtful questions to get young people into the conversation, to again hold governments accountable to this idea that, you know, today begins the process of the next VNR. So let's gather now, let's continue the conversation from this, the very first weeks after the last presentation. So thank you very much, Andrea, and I'm so glad you could be with us again today. And I would like to go next to Paul Ramat from VIVAT International. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa, for this opportunity. First, our gratitude and appreciation to you, to JCoR, your work for facilitating this educational process of VNR and high-level political forum. Yeah, for me, it's the second year I attended this process, and I'm getting to know more and more about this process, and it's helped us so for us to assist, to accompany our members on the ground, the grassroots, like Timor-Leste. I thank you for that, and thank you also for providing opportunity for our members to come to New York. This is very helpful. This is a great experience for our members, also for us as organizations to follow this process. In terms of our engagement in the high-level political forum and VNR, we have a lot of information, experiences, insights among us in the faith-based organizations. But the challenge is how to transfer these insights, experience to the UN, to the UN process, to the VNR process itself. For example, to the NGO major groups, because we have a good experience with the JCoR lab programs, but how to bring this message wider to the wider community, to the UN, and to this NGO major groups. Maybe in the future, next year, JCoR facilitate this process. At least those who involved in this VNR in the SDG labs, one or two of them to bring this to participate in the VNR process through NGO major groups. And I think we as JCoR facilitate that, build this bridge that our members can speak at the VNR process. Yeah. In terms of follow up this process VNR, I like the idea to how to bring this news from JUN to our members on the grassroots, to the people on the grassroots. So in this context, we as JCoR maybe try to provide this these materials, the result of this VNR, like video recordings, the websites, the informations, and send back to our members on the grassroots. And if they can translate some information in their local language, so people on the grassroots can follow that process, beyond process, and give some feedbacks and a response about what their governments talk to the world, the global community, to the UN about their country, and what's the response, what's the feedbacks of the people who heard about that. So there's an feedback. We need some feedbacks from the people about the process. And we as JCoR, we help to provide these materials, and also give some guiding questions that people can discuss on the ground with it. So that is my suggestion to Timor-Leste, to Greg. But I think we also do that as whole, as a group, as JCoR here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And that's a great point about, how we can build on starting a conversation, say, in the context of our preparatory meetings and in the lab sessions that we have organized. One point I heard is how to get those inputs into the ears of governments, more so than, since we weren't seeing government representatives in the room for our lab sessions, but how can we get that valuable information to them even afterward? And that's something that we can think about, especially among those of us who are here at the UN full-time, how we can strategically channel some of that great insight into future meetings or communication that we send to governments. And at the same time, I think is an excellent suggestion on your part that we could gather kind of a package of the written reports and the video recordings of all those governments who did make a presentation this year, and send those specific pieces to our networks in each of the countries that reported, to encourage them to at least, at the very least, tune into the 10-minute or 15-minute video that really is just a summary of a much larger report, and to invite their response, and to see, if there's something important that is being left out, that is missing. How can they help to guide us in responding to the government representatives here at the UN? And perhaps with that, we could also offer some encouragement that whatever their response or their reaction, positive, negative, or most likely a combination, that these are comments that we would encourage them to bring directly to government, however that is possible for them, and to invite other members of civil society around them to also be aware and to enter that conversation. Because again, it's this idea of keeping momentum, and we're in a special moment now too, where technically we've finished one part of the HLPF, but technically there's a second part that's coming in September called the SDG Summit. And so we're in this in-between space now where all of the governments are really required to remain engaged in this focus on the SDGs and on the SDG Review Forum. And so this is really an important moment for us to get even more voices into the conversation. The forum is really not officially over yet. And so we should take every opportunity we can to share what has been said and to invite more response to it going forward. So thank you very much for that suggestion, Paul. Is there anyone else who would like an opportunity to share some of your reflections on your experience or ideas for the future? Yes, I see the hand of Sister Justine Kepem. Justine?
Bonjour tout le monde, je suis Justine.
Hello everyone, I'm Justine from Congo. I'm happy to be with you to participate in this meeting. I will start by expressing my gratitude for Teresa and her team for everything that took place so far, and also towards my congregation who gave me the opportunity to participate in this forum, This was my first experience in a high-level political forum. What I would like to share with regard to the questions that you asked us earlier, it is very true. I participated online. I was not present physically, but I appreciate it very much. And I thank all the other participants who helped us be updated through their different sharing. I really discovered and learned what happened while I experienced myself many problems, technical problems to stay connected, and I was unable to follow all the sessions online. I would like to go back to the questions that were asked. What surprised me the most during our sharing and exchange, because I was not there physically present, I felt during the sharing of the sessions, the JCoR lab sessions, what I liked the most and what surprised me the most was to see that even our cultural differences, we have shared similar experiences. For instance, when we talked about inequalities and different forms of sufferings that populations are encountering in their apostolic contexts, I felt that it was really similar. It was about the same experiences, and this helped me and encouraged me to be hopeful and have hope that things might change one day. I felt that I was really supported and sustained by the experience and the sharing of others. And what I learned as well, and what I appreciated during these sessions in this forum, is that this forum opened me up to the world, to the reality of the world, to the realities, political realities. Before this forum, personally, I was not very much interested in politics. I used to say that politics is for politicians. I am consecrated and I'm only happy with my consecrated life and to be able to do what I can do. But in light of this experience, I realized that even though I am consecrated, I have a major role to play as member of the civil society. I have a role to play in my surroundings. I have to be the voice of those who do not have voice, just like the other participants said, and to be able to do something, to give my contribution to the government, to the state, I need to go through this formation. I call it formation because I felt that I was formed. I did not know anything about this, the existence of the objectives, the goals. And after discovering all of this and all the realities and the role I have to play in my country and in my own surrounding, I cannot keep this only for me. And also, this also awakened in me this lunch, like a prophetic push that I want to convert the people of God. All that I see around me cannot be something that I keep for myself, but I have to speak up for the good of my country. I want to consolidate this experience of learning by collaborating much more with the members of civil society in my country, in Kinshasa, and who are in charge of the implementation of the goals in my country. But unfortunately, since I started, I was unable to be in contact with members of a civil society. I tried, but unfortunately, they did not give me the possibility to share my contribution, my participation with regard to my experience and what I see and live around me. I'm not discouraged, but I would like to propose something, to suggest something for the good of my country. So, since members of the civil society of my country seem to have like a closed group, a closed hub, and they're not open to collaboration, probably they consider that the church is their enemy, and that's why they do not give us the possibility to be in contact with them. There's also another possibility that we can be conceivable. I learned, and I would like to convey what I learned and what I discovered with regard to the SDG and the report of that our country represented. So I would like to share this experience with others. For example, the youth of the parish, the youth in my neighborhood, and this would make it possible for me to convey, to share what I learned, because according to my experience in my country, people speak very little about the SDG. They're not very known in my country. I myself discovered lately, and I want this experience to share this experience with others. I already did this in my community, but I'm foreseeing if I have the possibility to do it in collaboration with other participants of my country, we can probably organize something to make ourselves heard, even if the civil societies of my country seem to be closed groups. Thank you very much, and thank you for everything.
Thank you very much, Justine, and you're warming my heart from every side to hear your excitement about all that you encountered in the process of preparing for this forum, and your enthusiasm to continue sharing it. I think that is absolutely essential to our overall vision of how to enact this mission that we summarize in Catholic social teaching, but really to try to be active builders of this concept of the kingdom of God, which has, many features in common with the vision that we see in the Sustainable Development Goals. And so I'm thrilled that you share this excitement, and that you're interested in finding new ways to share it among those that you encounter, especially with youth, and with sharing the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I know you're not the only one, even in this group, who attempted to contact that official group that was forming the civil society review in your country, and that it was difficult to break in, as you said. So I think perhaps, this is a call to us to continue to organize, even if it's from the outside, a bit as it may have to be, but to continue strengthening our own voice, forming our own ideas, and submitting them to existing groups and to the government, and hopefully kind of continuing to knock at the door as it were, until, or even if the door doesn't open, finding ways to slip the messages underneath, to find creative ways to share our experiences and our insights. And perhaps, as you said, it may be a feeling of opposition between church and government, or church and other sectors of society. But that means part of our work is also to address strengthening that relationship and saying we share a lot of goals. We have a lot in common, and we're all seeking the common good. So please let us work together. And here is how we are ready to contribute to that effort. And I think if we can be persistent in offering that contribution, we increase our chances of unifying ourselves and our effort with the rest of civil society, and hopefully with government as the next step to that journey. So I am not seeing any more hands requesting to speak. So I think I will call us back to our slides. Oh, yes. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Sorry, I was looking for reactions.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay. Thank you. So agreeing to everything others have said, I don't want to repeat. But I like to really thank Teresa for taking the pain, the trouble to organize. You have worked since months, I think, and really we can see the fruit of it. Thank you so much. Yeah, one great success I personally feel is to bring our members here, especially to get one CJ from our network, because I was writing the provincials and people from Slovakia, the other countries where members are, and finally managed to bring Joanna, which Janet and myself, we are really grateful to have 3 of them here. And then also we managed to get the appointment to do the mission visit, which was great, and then to do the follow-up. I think that is really great. We are looking forward to that they work at the national level. That's very important. So when it's also important that members come and experience what we are doing here, and that experience how the whole system, the NGOs and the UN work here together with all other partners. It's important to understand, because when we send messages, when we have the meeting, that's a different than they come and experience really here. So I think that's really great success this time for us. So once again, thank you so much for everyone, and especially thank for the reflection that we had in the morning, which was very helpful, as others said, and we really glad that we were able to bring our members, as Janet said, because of the funding, because as individual NGOs, we are not able to bring people. So I'm grateful to Hinton Foundation through JCoR, and thank you, Teresa, for all the hard work once again. Thank you so much. We look forward to work together with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. That you remind us all too that, yeah, it was an excellent effort on your part. In the delegates who were here in New York, many of them had an opportunity to have an official meeting with their own government representatives, even in these very, very busy days of the forum, which is really quite an accomplishment. It's very difficult to get a meeting on a regular day, and even more difficult when there are truly events that they could be attending from 7 in the morning until 9 o'clock in the evening. So congratulations to you for making the most of that experience of having delegates here in New York, and for making the experience all it can be. So I'd just like to direct our attention to a few more ideas for next steps, though we have already begun to share some of them in our conversation. But here is maybe a few points to summarize and a couple of new ideas. So first of all, for engaging further with this HLPF process itself, the first thing which I'll ask of all of you is to follow that very first link that I just put in the chat box to complete an evaluation form for this overall program that has been offered by JCoR to prepare and respond to the HLPF. So if you could each take a few minutes to open that form, click on that link before leaving the Zoom room, and then complete it in your own time as you have the opportunity. And another suggestion is to watch the video recordings that we captured from our SDG lab. So the link to that page is also in the chat box. And another point is to learn more about the SDG Summit, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, is kind of the part 2 to this year's HLPF. It's something that happens every 4 years. So it's not annual the way that the July forum is. But this year is one of those years. And so there will be a second part to the forum this year happening in September. And there will be more events to follow and more statements from governments. So we encourage you to follow that third link to the website to learn more about that summit. And there will also be more documents and summaries coming out of this first part of the forum. So we will continue to send messages to all of you through September to follow up on new announcements and analysis about the HLPF and new information about participating in the summit in September. One of those pieces that will be published soon is an official summary of the HLPF that will be coming from the president of the UN Economic and Social Council. So we will share that when it's available. If you're interested, there's a great debriefing and analysis of the forum already that was created by the International Institute for Sustainable Development. So we have a link to the video debriefing as well as a written summary here. And as always, we will share these slides afterward. So you will have all of these links. And then to continue engaging with the SDGs, we would recommend that you continue communicating or attempting to connect with whatever civil society network is monitoring SDGs in your country. And as we mentioned, even if they do seem to be a closed group, continue the communication anyway. Continue introducing yourself and what you have to offer to the conversation. And of course, we hope you will also continue communicating with your representatives at the UN, your congregation or the congregation with which you are connected, whatever representatives or office you have at the UN, to share your experiences and your concerns related to justice and peace on an ongoing basis, because of course we don't only gather for this one forum in the year. There are many opportunities for us to bring your insights into the UN conversation. And so we are interested in hearing from you on a regular basis as much as you are able. And so further to that point, we hope that you will all watch your mailboxes for the JCoR newsletter and other announcements through which we will share more information about the SDG Summit again in September, but also other invitations to help us find delegates for next year's HLPF program, or to contribute to written statements or other events related to other conferences and meetings that happen at the UN throughout the year. We also have a monthly online gathering for the whole JCoR family, the whole global community. That's the second Friday of each month at 1300 or 1 in the afternoon Universal Time, which is currently 9 in the morning in New York. So you're all welcome to attend that whenever you're available. We hope you will continue to follow us on social media, which currently consists of Facebook and what was formerly called Twitter and is now called X. And we also hope that you will invite and encourage other members of your congregation or your organization to engage with us in all of those same ways that I just mentioned. And once again, I just want to emphasize, please, please, please click on that first link in the box before you leave this room today. And even if you are not ready or you don't have time to answer the evaluation form right now, if you could just keep it open on your device so you can come back to it at a better moment. We would really love to get more of your feedback in writing that will help us to incorporate all of the lessons from this year into our actions for next HLPF and for the many other ways in which we seek to contribute to the work of the UN. And finally, I need to offer an enormous thanks to our team of interpreters, Anna and Pascal, who have been with us from the very beginning and all along this journey. They're extremely loyal contributors to this process, and we absolutely could not create this community without them. So I thank them very deeply for their steadfast participation with us and for their tremendous gifts that they offer to this community. And thank you all for making this delegation what it is through your presence and your efforts. And we will continue to communicate and to share ideas as we go forward. So thank you all very much. And you will hear from us again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gracias, Teresa.
Thank you.